of oil at the pump, and so it's just one more obstacle we need to get out of the way of the state regulation of this process called hydraulic fracturing. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President,
Senator from California.
I ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
And, Mr. President, I ask for the yeas and nays on the nomination.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be a sufficient second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Dement. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Crapo, Mr. Dement, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lugar. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain. Mrs. McCaskill. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Ms. Mikulski. Mr. Moran. Ms. Markowski. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Mr. Paul. Mr. Portman. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed, Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Blumenthal, Boxer, Brown of Ohio, Cardin, Conrad, Durbin, Graham, Heller, Inouye, Kerry, Klobuchar, Landrieu, Leahy, Murray, Reed of Rhode Island, Sanders, Stabenow, Tester, Webb, Whitehouse. Senators voting in the negative: Ayotte, Coburn, Corker, Cornyn, Enzi, Grassley, Inhofe, Isaacson, Johans, Lee, Lugar, Toomey, Wicker. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. Vitter, no. Mr. Reed of Nevada, aye. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Mr. Dement, no. Mr. Begich, aye. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, aye. Mr. Warner, aye. Mr. Franken, aye. Mr. Coons, aye. Mr. Hoeven, no. Mr. Roberts, no. Mr. Manchin, aye. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. Kyle, no. Mr. Rubio, no. Mr. Risch, no. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Merkley, aye. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, no. Mr. Schumer, aye. Mr. Baucus, aye. Mr. Burr, no. Mr. Harkin, aye. Mr. Mr. Crapo, no. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso, no. Mrs. McCaskill. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Ms. Snow. Ms. Snow, no. Mrs. Hutchison. Mrs. Hutchison, no. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson of Florida, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, aye. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran, no. Mr. Alexander. Mr. Alexander, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, no. Ms. Cantwell. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Cochran. Mr. Cochran, no. Mr. Carper. Mr. Carper, aye. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Bingaman, aye. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. McCain. Mr. McCain, aye. Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions, no. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman, no. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Pryor, aye. Mr. Udall. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Menendez, aye. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Akaka. Mr. Akaka, aye. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lieberman, aye. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coates, no. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Levin. Mr. Levin, aye. Ms. Mikulski. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Paul, no. Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Mr. Chambliss, no. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Blunt, no. Mr. Portman, no.
Not to 60. Does any senator still wish to vote or to change his or her vote? If not, on this nomination, the ayes are 59 and the nays are 39, and the nominee is confirmed. Under the previous order, the question is on the Morgan nomination. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be a sufficient second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Sir. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Sir. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. He did do that. Sure. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Dement. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Sure. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan.
William in my office said he was going to talk to you about the issue.
Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heller. Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Carey, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain. I got you. Mrs. McCaskill. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Ms. Mikulski. Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio. Yeah, I did. Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions. Sir. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey,
I wasn't going to sit here like this, yawning. I was yawning. You got it?
Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Baucus, Begich, Bingaman, Blunt, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown of Massachusetts, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Coates, Coburn, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Cornyn, Crapo, Durbin, Enzi, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Graham, Grassley, Hagan, Harkin, Heller, Hoeven, Inhofe, Inouye, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of South Dakota, Carey, Klobuchar, Cole, Landrieu, Levin, Lieberman, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, McConnell, Menendez, Merkley, Moran, Murkowski, Murray, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Paul, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Roberts, Rockefeller, Sanders, Sessions, Shaheen, Shelby, Snow, Stabenow, Tester, Thune, Toomey, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Vitter, Webb, Whitehouse, Wicker, and Wyden. Mr. Portman. Aye. Mr. Portman, aye. Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Schumer, aye. Mr. DeBent voted in the negative. Mr. Warner, aye. Mr. Burr. Mr. Burr, aye. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Rubio, aye.
Yes, but I thought I already voted.
Mr. Bennett, aye. Mrs. McCaskill. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Kyle. Mr. Kyle, aye. Mrs. Hutchison. Mrs. Hutchison, aye. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Corker. Mr. Corker, aye. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chambliss, aye. Mr. Cochran. Mr. Cochran, aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown of Ohio, aye. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Leahy, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, Wisconsin, aye.
Are there any senators in the chamber wishing to vote or to change their vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 96, the nays are 1, and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motions to reconsider are considered made and laid upon the table. Any related statements will be printed in the record. The President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate will resume legislative session. The Senator from Oklahoma.
I'd ask unanimous consent that I be allowed to speak for 30 minutes, and following that, the Senator from Rhode Island be recognized.
Without objection.
There's been a lot of comments made about energy, and I have to admit I come from an energy state. A third of our economy is connected to energy in one way or And I think the political games that we're playing here are just that. You know, I have a vision that I can see 50 years of prosperity for America on the basis of one thing, and that's us actually using the wonderful resources that are in our country for our citizens and extend an opportunity for our kids, in spite of our budget deficits, in spite of our debt, that would enable them to have the same kind of opportunities we've had. And the way that you do that is to utilize the resources. If you look around the world and you look at the most stable countries, you look at Canada, what's happening? Canada's living within their means. They have fairly low tax rates. They're utilizing their resources. They have trade surpluses. If you look at Australia, they have a stable currency. Their currency has markedly appreciated compared to the dollar. The Canadian currency is markedly appreciated compared to the dollar. And they're utilizing their resources to advance their country and their wealth and their opportunity. And we hear all these statements made by lots of people, but most of them are half-truths. And let me explain what I mean. There's nobody that disagrees that it's going to take us at least 25 to 30 years to wean ourselves from carbon fuels, if in fact we should do that. But let's say we should. What is the difference between burning a carbon atom that's coming from the Middle East or Venezuela versus a carbon atom that we produce here? Because we're going to do that. Right now, 30% of our oil comes from either the Middle East or Venezuela. Not necessarily areas of the world that are akin to be kind to us as a nation. Here's the difference. If we burn our carbon atoms, we add between 2 and 4 million jobs over the next 10 years. Maybe even more than that. If we burn our carbon atoms, which we're going to burn carbon for at least 25 years, we decrease our trade deficit by at least $200 billion a year. That's $200 billion of wealth that does not leave our nation. And it actually is more than that. Because if we get $200 billion worth of American oil and American energy, that creates another $50 to $60 billion worth of economic multipliers. We are the only nation in the world where we have the natural resources to make ourselves energy independent, and yet our government will not allow us to have access to that energy. So my challenge to my colleagues, given the fact that we will burn carbon, we don't even have to have a discussion about global warming or climate change, because even with the best estimates is it's going to take us 25 to 30 years to get off carbon. So during that 25 or 30 years, should we not utilize and should we not create a way in which we actually consume our own resources rather than send money and wealth out of this country to be able to utilize the resources of someone else? And I'm for conservation. I'm for increased mileage. I'm for doing everything we can to wean ourselves from a dependency on a foreign source for our energy needs. Other than our debt, the greatest risk this country faces is our dependency and reliance on somebody else for our energy needs. And if you take our friends in Mexico and Canada, and you take what we're producing, we're able to attain 70%. That's a tremendous change over the last few years, and that didn't have anything to do with the present administration. Matter of fact, oil production, natural gas production, both onshore and offshore, is down in double digits under this administration. Permitting, not new lands that have been opened up, but existing lands that are open have dropped to 40% in terms of the permitting process. We in our nation have over 1.2 trillion barrels of oil equivalent that we can access if, in fact, we would. That's more than any other nation in the world. So what is it that the big political fight's about? Do we really want to send wealth out of this country? Do we really not want to take advantage of what is available to us simply because of our location as a nation that will actually create tremendous opportunities for our children, that will create a new vision of America that is energy independent as we transition off of carbon-based fuels? Why would we not want to do that when there's no difference in burning an imported carbon atom versus burning a carbon atom produced here? The benefits are obvious. We have a bill that we're considering that, to me, is mindless. It's about the politics of division, and it's not about any truth. The fact is the major oil companies that reside in our country pay the highest tax rate of anybody in the world. They pay over 41.5% of every dollar of revenue they make comes straight to the federal government. There aren't any other businesses that compare to that. Google doesn't compare to that. Facebook doesn't compare to that. Apple doesn't compare to it. They're all half that rate. So we're already taxing the oil companies. Matter of fact, to the tune of almost $36 billion last year came to the Treasury from the major oil companies in this country. And the bill we have on the floor won't improve the revenue $1. And that's the fact. There will not be one increase in dollar over a 10-year period that will come to the federal government if you pass this bill. And why is that? Most people don't know, but my background is as an accountant. That was my first training, my first field. And accelerated depreciation just delays the time at which the federal government gets the tax dollars that they're going to collect. It doesn't change the total amount of tax dollars. It just delays it so that we match revenues, which is one of the things you're trained to do in accounting and in business. You match revenues with expenses. And so what we've set up, and by the way, oil depletion allowance isn't allowed for the large oil companies. It's not allowed for them. It's been gone for 20 years, over 20 years, is accelerated depreciation on what is called intangible drilling costs. And it really won't have any major effect on the big companies. It'll literally kill the smaller capitalized companies because their capital needs are recaptured over a long period of time if you eliminate intangible drilling costs. So what does that mean? That means you'll have less exploration in our country. You will actually harm the exploration by the middle and small oil companies. And some of them say, well, we don't want to do that for them. We don't want to affect the small. We just want to affect the big oil companies. The big oil companies will pay no increase change in their net taxes over a period of 10 years. So the only thing that you could actually claim with this bill is the time value of money over that period of time. And the time value of money right now is less than 2% a year. So what are we really talking about? We're talking about a political game, and we're not talking about energy security. We're not talking about creating 2 to 4 million jobs. We're not talking about substance. We're talking about politics. And the shame is that nobody out there is talking about a vision where America doesn't send $200 billion of its wealth out of the country a year. There's no reason for us to do that. And we've had every excuse except a legitimate one for why we shouldn't burn our own oil and our own natural gas liquids. What we've seen in this country in the last 5 to 7 years on private lands, doesn't have anything to do with the federal government, is a renaissance in energy independence, moving us from importing over 60% of our oil from both the Middle East and Venezuela to 30%. That's a big change. Why is it that North Dakota, Montana, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Louisiana, areas of Pennsylvania, West Virginia now, why are they seeing declines in their unemployment rate? It's all because they're producing energy that we're going to burn no matter where it comes from, and we should be burning our own assets. The other thing that we don't think about is the fact that these energy companies have made a marked difference in the cost of everyday goods for every American in this country. Go into your kitchen and look at all the products in your kitchen. Go into your bathroom and look at all the products in your bathroom. The fact is natural gas at $2.13 a million BTU today has enabled us to now become competitive worldwide in fertilizer, polyethylene, all the raw materials for packaging, for synthetic goods, from clothing to vinyls to housing materials. What has happened is a renewal in manufacturing in this country on the basis of this large expansion of available natural gas. And if we do that with oil as well, what we're going to do is set our country up to beat everybody in the world in terms of petrochemical byproducts. Why would we not want to do that? Why would we put anything as a roadblock to that? So we've heard all the debate. The best part I know that seems the oddest to me is to think that doing this isn't going to have an impact on prices. We all talk about the fact that oil is a global commodity. And at the same time we're saying that, we're saying American speculation on oil is why the price is higher. Well, there's not just American speculation on oil. You can trade all over the world today in the commodities. Why is there a $15 to $20 premium right now? Because of the situation in the Middle East with Iran. Would the prices come down if that political situation was gone? Yes. Would the prices come down if we eliminated every American's ability to speculate or hedge a bet against the price of oil? Absolutely not. Because the price of oil is set on the world market, not on the American market. And it's traded by everybody around the world. So the best way to lower the price of oil is to solve the problems in the Middle East, but produce more. Prices go down when production goes up. So the fact is we have an administration that has taken credit for something that they obviously aren't responsible for, which is exploration on private lands, and has denied the fact that they have limited the ability of those people who actually have leases but no permits on public lands to explore for oil. And I'm not talking, one of the answers you hear from the Secretary of the Interior is nobody wants to permit new natural gas. No, they don't, not at $2.13. But they all want a permit where the areas where there's oil or there's natural gas liquids, except the permitting has been slowed down. Matter of fact, the new plan is to cut the permits in half on lands that have already been opened for exploration. I'd invite all the critics to come to Oklahoma to see where we drill for oil. More oil rigs are running in this country by Oklahoma companies than anybody else in the country combined. And they do it well. They do it in an environmentally sound way. They do it with the smallest footprint you can imagine, and they're held to accountability by every corporation commission throughout the country. I know in the President Pro Tem's state, their corporation commission is right on top of it. We have 60 years of experience in Oklahoma with fracking. We've never had one contamination of any water zone in 60 years in the state, second to Texas and Louisiana, that has drilled more holes in the ground than any other state in the country. And so what we hear is all the reasons why we shouldn't create an opportunity through our natural resources for our kids rather than why we should. And it's time we should. Now, there's one other thing that's affecting the price of oil that people don't talk about very often. And that happens to be the value of the dollar. When the dollar declines in value, when we have deficit spending and big debt, the price of oil goes up. Why is that? Because the price of oil is traded in dollars. So when the world sees us not addressing our deficit issue, our debt issue, what happens is the value of the dollar declines. You know, 10 years ago, the value of the euro versus the dollar was 96 cents. It's $1.32 today. So we can buy only 2/3 as much as we could 10 years ago in terms of products from Europe. Well, that has an impact on the price of oil. If the dollar was strong, if we managed our budget well, if we didn't have deficits, oil would go down. So the next time you're angry about paying $4 plus for a gallon of gas, only place you have to look is the U.S. Congress. Because if we weren't running deficits, if we were making the tough decisions, the value of the dollar would be much stronger. The purchasing power of that dollar would be stronger, and the value of oil would be less. People don't talk about that. They just assume that it's just the world market, and it's not. It's what we do here matters. And the fact is that we don't address in any significant way the problems in front of us from a fiscal standpoint has created a lack of confidence in the value of the dollar. It has declined. Therefore, the price of oil has gone up. So we have a way. This is one of the easy problems for America to solve. It's one of the ways to create a great opportunity for our kids and our grandkids, and that is utilizing the resources that we have here. And we can do that in an environmentally clean way that will not change our goal to become clean in terms of our energy utilization. It will not, you know, as you look at it, we subsidize solar to the tune of $692 a megawatt hour. We subsidize, if you call it subsidization, natural gas at 64 cents per megawatt hour, oil at 69 cents, coal at somewhere slightly above that. For wind, it's over $100 per megawatt hour. So the money you're paying in taxes, we're sending out to inefficiently compete with what is known to be there because the technology isn't there yet. And that's why it's going to take us 25 to 30 years to ever develop the technology to wean ourselves from carbon-based fuels. I'd put one more thought. There's new technology in terms of thorium nuclear reactors. A lot of people are worried about nuclear reactors, and they are concerning. We're very safe in this country, how we've operated, and we have a very good Nuclear Regulatory Commission that oversees that. But the new technology eliminates nuclear waste and eliminates any threat of a meltdown. Now think about that. So here we have a new technology in nuclear that eliminates significantly 99% of the waste. There is absolutely no threat of a nuclear explosion or nuclear meltdown. How many dollars did the Department of Energy put into that research last year? $0. We have the president talking about algae. ExxonMobil's already spent almost $1 billion on algae. Why should we take your taxpayer dollars to invest in something that the biggest oil company in the world is already investing in? Can we do it better? Probably not. Is more money the answer? No. Technology and scientific breakthrough is the answer, and that takes time. So as you hear the debate on raising the taxes on oil companies, just remember, you're not really going to raise any taxes because the amount of revenue that actually comes to the federal government isn't going to change. Sounds good. It's good for politics. It's good for the election cycle. It's good to make somebody angry about the price of oil. But the problem with the price of oil has nothing to do with that. It has to do with supply, it has to do with the decreased value of the dollar, and it has to do with factors that are outside the control of this country in terms of market price for oil based on significant geopolitical considerations. So I hope my colleagues will think a little bit longer term rather than the next election about our energy needs. The one thing we've never had, and the one thing I've already heard on the floor this week, is it'll take us 10 years to become energy independent. You know, I was in this body 7.5 years ago. I heard the same thing. Had we started 7.5 years ago, we wouldn't be importing one drop of oil from the Middle East today. Not one. And the price of our gasoline wouldn't be above $4. So you can't use that as a reason not to do it. The fact is we can do it better, we can do it smarter, we can markedly increase the revenues of the federal government by increased resource utilization, and we're going to be burning carbon for at least 25 more years. I want us to burn our carbon, not somebody else's carbon. With that comes the future for our children. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Clerk. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Acosta.